Khalaf, who is the Yezidi human rights representative. Gulie?
Respected Chairperson and committee member, I'm deeply honored to address you on the plight of Yezidis. Thank you for this opportunity. Last year, I visited the Yezidi refugee camps in Iraq, and so have personally witnessed the horrendous conditions they're living in. First, a brief introduction. 94% of Iraq's population is Muslim. Yezidis make up a fragment of that 6% that is non-Muslim. The Yezidis are indigenous people of Iraq and Middle East in general. They're an ethnic, I'm sorry, my voice is echoing, it's a little bit difficult. They're an ancient ethnic and religious group. However, some community members, as well as Kurds, consider them ethnically Kurdish, while others point at them as Arabs. This identity question has created conflict and subjected Yezidis to political and economic pressure from Kurdish officials, as well as death threats. In addition, some Muslims consider Yezidis to be devil worshippers and infidels. As a result, the community has suffered innumerable attacks by Islamist militants. They have been the target of 73 genocide in the past 1,400 years. In recent years alone, the estimated Yezidi population in Iraq has fallen from 700,000 in 2005 to 500,000 in recent years. The population continues to decline as the peaceful Yezidi witnessed their 74th genocide in the hands of ISIS. This recent genocide occurred on August 3rd, 2014. Kurdish forces had promised to defend Yezidi villages. On August 2nd, the same people, the same forces, began to withdraw their forces from these villages, leaving without informing the Yezidis and without providing them with any kinds of means to defend themselves. ISIS thus began their horrendous acts against Yezidis. They slaughtered 3,000 people and took away as war booty women and children, who were later sold into sexual slavery. Yezidis were held neither by Iraqi forces nor by Kurdish forces, and thus began the worst crime against women today. Slavery that was once wiped out has been fully revived by ISIS. ISIS is raping, torturing, enslaving women and have been publicizing it on social media and on special magazines. Many of the 6,000 victims are still being in ISIS's custody today. They're being held as sex slaves, sold into servitude, being forced to marry ISIS soldiers, and being raped and left to bleed to death from rapes. Women commit suicide to avoid further violation. There is the case of Jaylin, a 19-year-old who hanged herself to avoid further gang rape. There is the case of another woman who burned herself so she could become unattractive to ISIS and the violation on her could stop. Some have begged the coalition forces to go and bomb their cells to end their misery. The absolute misery of being a Yezidi woman in 21st century is haunting. There's the case of the 75-year-old grandma, Baghi Naif Tariq, who managed to be untouched by ISIS and escaped with her grandchildren, only to meet death by drowning with them as they took their chances crossing dangerous seas. The former sex slaves who managed to escape, along with more than 400,000 Yezidis, are spread across Kurdish region and living in subhuman conditions as IDP. They're living in different camps across Kurdistan, where there is not enough food, not enough water, and no education. There's 10,000 in Syrian camps and approximately 20,000 in Turkey living in similar situation. On behalf of Yezidis Human Rights Organization and my people, I appeal to you to support the Yezidis through the following, but most urgently, bring the women at risk, the rape survivors and their families to Canada, so that survivors can overcome the fear of the perpetrators who are roaming free around them in Iraq. Yezidi refugees currently living in Turkish camps are afraid due to the growing number of Islamists and clashes between the forces inside Turkey. They need your help. Please bring them to Canada. Those still in Kurdish area of Iraq need your help desperately. The Yezidi have no real protection, neither under Iraq nor under Kurdistan. In fact, they are at times mistreated and beaten, but are afraid to bring charges because they're afraid of retaliation. Even after nearly 2 years after the genocide in 2014, there is fear in Yezidi community in Iraq. To overcome this fear, some Yezidi women have armed themselves to ensure their safety from ISIS. Under leadership of Haider Shasho, Yezidi men and women are joining small groups to defend themselves to prevent future massacre of their families. They support the UN's call for the participation of women in peacekeeping forces and continuous monitoring by the UN Secretary General and the presence of gender experts to develop detailed report for time-bound action. We appeal to you to also support Yezidis on the ground by having the Canadian government give military training and desperately needed military supplies to Yezidi men and women who only want to defend their families against ISIS. They can be either brought to Canada and be given advanced military training, or the Canadian government can arrange to provide them with a training on the ground in Iraq. The peaceful Yezidis who are indigenous to Middle East, the Yezidis whose prayer call for the welfare of all human beings are being exterminated. I know that Canada have always had a tradition of helping others. I appeal to you and to your offices to help Yezidis. I appeal to you to ensure that the 74th genocide of Yezidis be the last genocide. Thank you.